Okay, so as we discussed last week, the social diversity unit is a 3-week unit. So last week we completed the assignment about how can we add inclusion and diversity to our environments, our peers, in our social groups, or in our schools. And we completed the quiz. If for whatever reason that wasn't done, that does need to still be done. This week, we're working on reading and taking notes and then annotating 3 articles. Okay, so write that down. 3 articles. One of the 3 articles must be a scholarly peer-reviewed article. We're going to access all of our articles through SBC databases. And then at the end of the week, we will submit it to the library reference annotated sources Dropbox. In the library reference annotated resources Dropbox, you have 2 links. One is to the process of how to write annotations, and the second link is an example of annotations. Both are provided by OWL, which stands for Online Writing Lab, and it's produced by Purdue University. So anytime you have to do any kind of document or research-based writing, I encourage you to use the OWL resources. It's always up to date and it's easy to access. It gives you explanations and examples. And we'll come back to these after we find and identify our sources. Okay? So again, the goal by the end of today is that you'll have a topic and maybe even your first source. While you're reading and skimming your articles, you should be taking notes. The notes may be taken either on paper and pencil or pen and paper, whatever you prefer, or they could be done digitally. You'd then use those notes to write your annotations. So our first step is, again, finding a topic. So I'm going to go to the home page of our course. And scroll all the way down to the bottom. And then click on where it says Library Resources and Services. So write that down. Bottom of homepage, Library Resources and Services. Resources and Services. We click on it. And wait patiently for it to open. Okay, so on this screen, you have a variety of different links. There's guides and videos that you can watch. This is also where you can book an appointment with tutoring services if you ever wanted to get help with assignments. We can either type in our search term here, which is going to search articles, books, and all kinds of other content throughout the whole library. I'm going to ask that you use databases A to Z. So next step is to click on databases A to Z. As you can see, there is an alphabetical list. We're going to go to O. So click on O. And then go to opposing viewpoints. So opposing viewpoints is a database of controversial topics globally. Your topic is going to be a controversial topic, basically something that has multiple sides to an argument. Okay. Once we're in opposing viewpoints, if we have a topic in mind, we could type it in there. If we don't have any idea, we can click the little light bulb that says browse issues. And then we come to a complete alphabetized list of possible topics. So once you're in opposing viewpoints, again, you're going to click on the light bulb to browse topics. Unless you know a topic and you're just going to type it in. So since we talked about finances a little bit, I'm going to look at predatory lending. I don't really know much about that, but it sounds interesting. So it says predatory lending typically refers to any practice that imposes unfair or abusive terms on the borrower. These practices may include the coercion, deception, or exploitation of a borrower into a loan he or she cannot afford, does not need, or does not want. Any money lending product can be manipulated by a lender to include high rates of interest, unreasonable payback terms, high fees for late payment, and other methods that obligate borrowers to repay a loan with excessive interest and fees, often much more than they believed they borrowed. Products used for predatory lending money to consumers include short-term cash advance loans, high-interest cash loans intended to be repaid over a set length of time, such as payday loans. So we have a bunch of these places around us. If you see the signs that say, you know, if you have proof of a job, we'll lend you money. The problem with that is that if I don't have the money today and I'm already borrowing on the check I'm going to get next week, now I'm going to be paying interest on the money I'm borrowing, and I don't even have any of that money yet. And then that cycle likely continues and gets worse because now I not only spent the money, but I owe the interest. It's not have that money the next week. When I do get paid, the money is already gone. So how I can't get any more money, I go and borrow more. Right? And it turns into a vicious cycle. So if this were going to be my topic, I have just read a brief summary of the issue, right? And there is an additional article that follows it. Okay. So I've decided I'm going to use this source. I kind of like the topic. It's very real. There's two sides to it, right? Yes, it's predatory, but the people go into it willingly, right? So your essay is going to be 4 paragraphs. Write that down. 4 paragraphs. Paragraph 1 is your basic introduction. It's where you summarize the scenario, include citation for any information that is not common knowledge. A lot of people don't know anything about what predatory lending is. So if this were going to be my topic, even in my introduction where I'm summarizing it, I need to cite where that information came from. Paragraph 2 is going to be one side of the story or one side of the argument. Paragraph 3 is the opposing side. And again, we're including citations from at least 2 different sources in each of our body paragraphs. So at least 2 different sources. in each of our body paragraphs. And then paragraph 4 is your conclusion, where you're either going to suggest a truce, meaning that, hey, we can just agree to disagree on this topic. Both sides are valid. Neither one is really more correct than the other. Or suggest one side is more valid than the other. All of this should be done in approximately 500 words and include a reference list of at least 3 sources, one of which must be a scholarly, peer-reviewed, or academic journal. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Peer-reviewed or academic journal. Can you please put the phone away? And so now that I've found one valid source, I've decided I'm going to use it. The first thing I need to do is get my citation or my reference information. That's one of the great things about the databases, is that they provide the citation information for you. So you can see at the bottom of this article, we have source citation. We're using APA. Okay, so add that to your notes. It's APA. Now I can copy this citation, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it into a Word document. When I paste it into the Word document, I want to choose keep text only or merge formatting. Because if you keep the original format from the web page, sometimes it will bring with it the coding, and then you end up with weird fonts, weird spacing, sometimes shading, and that shouldn't be there, right? So once I've pasted it in, I'm going to go to my Home tab. You'll want to write these steps down too. Then over to the little icon with the little arrows for line spacing options. Everything is going to be double spaced, and your reference entries are going to have a hanging indent. So to get hanging indent, we again go back to the little line spacing icon and then go down to line spacing options. Jot that down. So line spacing options. Then under special, click and select hanging. And then click OK. So that makes the first line of your entry hang out on the left, and every subsequent line gets tabbed in automatically by setting that hanging indent. So that when you go to list all of your sources on your reference list, the author's name, or in this case, the title of the article, sticks out. Now, if this were going to be my source that I'm using in my paper, when I cite it within the text of my paper, I'm going to use the title of the article, comma, year of publication, because I don't have an author. So my in-text citation would be parentheses with the words predatory lending, comma, 2019. That's my in-text citation. And so again, just to review how we do the hanging indent, you highlight, click on the home button, go to the little arrows for the line spacing and paragraph spacing, click it, then go down to line spacing options and choose hanging from under the special area. In academic writing, everything should also be 12-point font Times New Roman. So we're going to set our font. And titles should also be Times New Roman 12-point font, but are going to be bolded. So on this Word document, I just titled it Source Notes Predatory Lending. It is highly encouraged that you take notes while you're skimming and reading your articles so that when you go to write the annotations, a lot of the work is done. And then when you go to write the essay, again, a lot of the work is done. Because we're doing a lot of digital research, I also encourage you to do digital notes. You can, of course, still do handwritten notes if that works better for you. But if you want to try to do digital notes, I encourage you to insert a table of 2 columns for each of your sources. And then in the left-hand side, you would put in keywords. And in the right-hand side, you would put in either quotes, paraphrase, or summary. I'm going to go back to our article now. So for example, at the beginning of this, it gave us a list of the different types of predatory lending. I think that's going to be really important. So I'm going to copy all of that. And I'm going to go back to my notes. And I'm going to paste it in there. And I'm going to write in types of predatory lending. I'm going to make sure I put direct quotes around this so that I know I borrowed that word for word. Okay. Now I'm going to save my document. And my document is going to be titled with my last name. And the title of the assignment, which this is Source Notes for APA. And I'm going to save it. I encourage you all to please make sure you're saving your materials frequently and to save them to the OneDrive so that you can access them from elsewhere. When you go to submit your assignment at the end of the week, you will need to download a copy of it from OneDrive and then upload it from into the Dropbox from your downloads. Simply because the Dropbox does not communicate with OneDrive. It can't find it. So a lot of you have run into that lately where you don't know where your document is. It's in OneDrive, but the Dropboxes do not communicate well with OneDrive. So we have to download a copy of it once you're done. Okay. All right, so this would be my notes sheet. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy my citation and open another document. I'm going to open a new document, and I'm going to title this one. Do all of my formatting first, times New Roman 12. Set my spacing for double spacing. And I'm going to go ahead and title this APA Annotations Predatory Lending. What happened? Nothing is typing. All right, APA citation or annotations, predatory lending. My titles, again, everything's going to be 12-point Times New Roman font, but my titles are going to be bolded. So I'm going to click bold. Then go ahead and hit enter. And take that bold off. And I'm going to paste in my citation. Now, underneath of my citation, annotations are 3 little paragraphs. Okay, so write that down, 3 little paragraphs. The first little paragraph is going to be a summary of the source, the overall topic. Just a couple sentences. Your next little paragraph is going to be where you assess or evaluate the source. So does it have bias? Most publications are going to have some kind of biases. You know, if they're supporting one side of the argument and kind of ridiculing the other side of the argument, they have a bias for the one side that they're supporting. Do they have any bias? What are the credentials? Like, are there experts mentioned in the article? What type of publication is it? Is it a magazine? Is it a news channel? Is it a peer-reviewed scholarly journal? A peer-reviewed scholarly journal means that it is written by professionals for professionals in a particular field, right? So if I'm going to use a scholarly journal about predatory lending, it's probably written by a lawyer, an ethics committee, or maybe a banker. So that's the second little paragraph of my annotations. The third little paragraph is how will it be used in the essay. So this would be something like, I will use this source to define what predatory lending is, and it will probably be in my intro as well as one of the body paragraphs. Just a sentence or two. They don't have to be long. Okay, so the week's goal is that you have annotations for 3 sources. So again, I'm going to save my document. And now I have it. If I do a little bit at a time, it's not a huge cumbersome task to have to write an essay. When you're reading, you can skim read, take some notes. Again, either use the digital notes or use handwritten notes. Then you take those notes to do your summary, your assessment, and how it will be used. Once you do this step, a lot of this, guys, you could likely copy and paste it right into your body paragraphs. Like, the hard work is done here. Then when you put it all together next week for the essay, you can come back and use this. So if we do things in steps, it breaks down the larger tasks and makes it much more accessible. Okay, so we've just kind of demonstrated how to do an annotation and what should be in an annotation. I'm going to go back to the databases now. And you can highlight and annotate within your articles and then send it to yourself. Like I could send this in an email to myself. I can download it. Right, so if you want to try to annotate the text and highlight the text while you're reading, rather than doing notes, that could be helpful too. I find with highlighting though, by the time I get to the end, I forget why I highlighted it. So I take the time to jot things down and do some notes. Okay. So we're going to go back to the previous page to predatory lending. And at the bottom of the screen, another great reason why using the databases is encouraged, because they've done all the sorting and searching for you. The only information in databases is going to be legitimate, verified, credible sources. And we've mentioned these academic journals. So if we look at the other things that are suggested, right here, there are 2 academic journal articles. So I'm going to click on those. Cutting off the middlemen, holding third-party payment processors liable for the acts of their merchant clients. And then the second one says, a flip, look at predatory lending. Will the Fed's revised Regulation Z end abusive refinancing practices? I think this one sounds much better. It's kind of old. It's all the way back from 2003, but I now have a key word, this Regulation Z. It doesn't seem to have worked because we still have abusive refinancing practices. So we'll click on this one. And again, I can skim it. Okay, this one you also know is a scholarly, peer-reviewed, or academic journal because it is using in-text citations. Right? It too is citing sources. And again, I'm going to cite it. So I can do that either at the very bottom to get my citation, or I can use the little cite tool at the top too. So click citation. Again, I want APA. I'm going to highlight that, copy it, and now I'm going to go ahead and put it back into my notes. Okay. And over here, I'm going to paste it, merge formatting. Once you've set the formatting and you do merge formatting, it will automatically format it properly. Okay, so that's the benefit of doing it in the beginning, because then it will continue doing it for you. Okay, and again, save. So I'm going to do a Control S to save my document. And now I would go back and start reading a little closer. The goal for today is to identify a topic. Okay, I've went through how to find a topic. It just has to be something that has 2 sides. Like last week, we talked a lot about inclusion and diversity and racism. You know, obviously, any one of those things has multiple arguments with it. You could build onto that topic. Maybe, you know, you've heard something in the news lately or someone talking about something that's interesting to you. Last class period, I used Facebook as an example, is how they've, the lawsuit against them just ended last week, where they were being accused of encouraging people to be violent in protests last year prior to the presidential election. And it was found that, yes, their logarithms were sending more violent and volatile articles and posts to people that were already angry. So therefore, they were found guilty of causing harm. So they have renamed their company as a result of this to Meta, which is interesting because that's metadata. Like that's exactly what they're doing. They're mining our data. And now they've renamed their company Meta. But they do also run Instagram. So I think it's kind of ironic that like people are saying F Facebook and their policies and they're using Instagram. Like it's the same company. And if we read the fine print, we agree to them using our data when you click yes, that I read the terms and conditions. It's a private company that we agree to participate in. So think about, you know, where really your privacies are and are not. But also things associated with social media. They're huge controversial topics. Okay? So your goal, again, is to find a controversial topic using the Library Resources and Services tab, and then choosing databases A to Z. Then once you get databases A to Z, you're going to opposing viewpoints. And in opposing viewpoints, you can either type in a topic or you can search the topics that are there. There's one final thing I'd like to share with you before we conclude. We went through together what should be in an annotation, but earlier I also pointed out that there were resources in OWL for you. So the first one here is an explanation of what should be in an annotation. So just like we went through, summary, assess, and reflect. Remember, 3 short little paragraphs are annotations. And I said short, a couple sentences. The longest one would be your summary, and that might be 3 or 4 sentences. Your assessment could probably be done in 1 or 2 sentences. And then your reflection, how you're going to use it, again, a couple sentences there. For at least 3 sources. The other resource is also by OWL, and this one gives you an example of what annotations look like. So I'm just going to scroll down to the second example. You have the publication information. Then it tells you about the book. It says, in this book, a nonfiction based on the journalist's experiential research, Heinrich attempts to ascertain whether it is currently possible for an individual to live on a minimum wage in America, taking jobs as a waitress, a maid in a cleaning service, and a Walmart sales employee. The author summarizes and reflects on her work, her relationships with fellow workers, and her financial struggles in each situation. That's a summary of an entire book. Okay. So then the example goes on to show that she's an experienced journalist and why this would be credible work. Okay. The third is, again, how it would be used in your papers. This particular example does not include a third paragraph because maybe they're not actually using it to write a paper. They're just using it for knowledge at this point. Okay. But again, your annotations will have 3 short paragraphs: the summary, the assessment, and the reflection. And I'm going to just go back to our home page of our course for a moment. So again, we're continuing with the diversity unit, the library reference quiz from last week. If that's not done, please complete it. The annotations is what we are looking on completing this week. And then next week, we are looking at using those annotations to write a short essay, approximately 500 words, 4 paragraphs. The following week is when we will share out our civic engagement presentations. I've noticed a couple people have already submitted those, so that's awesome. The civic engagement presentation, if you click on the assignment, it explains what you should have done. It says 1 of 3 options. Right, so if we haven't done that yet, you're making an 8 to 10 slide PowerPoint presentation, including some images and text, reflecting on a past volunteer activity, a current volunteer activity, or researching a need in our community and an organization that is serving that need. Right outside the door, there's a poster for a Key Club clothing drive. Right, so Key Club is an international organization that serves communities. That could even be the example. Right, so you could look up what Key Club International does who they help, and create 8 to 10 slides about them and things that they do. Okay. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and conclude our little discussion of APA and databases. Please use the